Welcome to In Search of Catholic School Excellence, the show where we spotlight the programs, people, and practices making a real difference in Catholic education today. If you're a school leader striving to build a community of faith, excellence, and innovation, you've come to the right place. Each episode brings you ideas that are working, stories that inspire, and new possibilities for your school's mission. Let's explore what's working and what's possible. Welcome back, folks. Today we are joined by Theresa Rothstein from Sacred Heart School in Patterson. We had the joy of going out to visit Sacred Heart and got to see firsthand what a beautiful school it is. And so I wanted to bring Theresa on to talk about what a great school that she has. Theresa, would you be able to give us a little bit of history of the school and how you arrived at being principal?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for inviting me to be on this and share our story here. So, I moved to town 20 years ago from the Bay Area. I was a Bay Area transplant, as us Pattersonites like to call us. And when my twins turned 5 years old, it was time to put them into kindergarten. And we weren't quite sure what direction we wanted to go. And so we started shopping around and stumbled upon this Catholic school in our neighborhood that was about 4 blocks away because everything in Patterson is super close. And from the moment I called the office and started just asking 1,001 questions to the secretary, I immediately knew that there was something different about this campus. And so came on, took my twins here. She showed us around, gave us the tour. I called back about 14 more times. At that point, she either had caller ID or just recognized my voice. And it turns out now that she just recognized my voice because she is that kind. And we walked onto this campus and just felt welcomed. The teachers were kind and loving and supportive. The culture felt really great. It was a small school, so I knew that my boys would be in really great hands. And then fast forward, they entered first grade. My youngest moved into kindergarten here, and I was out at morning assembly, and the preschool director and I crossed paths, and she had mentioned that she was looking for a new hire over at the preschool. My background is in early childhood education, and so I said, you know what? How wonderful would it be to work on the same campus as my children? And so I stepped into that role, and then the following year I moved into leadership and I was the preschool director. And then my boys continued on here K through 8, and when my youngest moved into 8th grade, I was the third grade teacher at that time, and the board had approached me to let me know that the current principal would not be returning and asked if I would consider or discern applying for the position. And I immediately thought, absolutely not. I am definitely not principal material. I can be a good wing woman. I can definitely be a vice principal, but I'm not ready to take on that kind of responsibility. But clearly, it's not my plan. I just go along with it. And here I am now principal. And I took over, ironically enough, the year of COVID. And so I've been in this role now into my 6th year and 14 years with our diocese. So that's kind of how I got here. But what kept me here now that my kids are graduated and I'm sending that youngest one that was just entering kindergarten off to college in September. What kept me here is the community. When I say that our school is different, I truly mean that. And I think that people that come on campus not only recognize that, but my hope is that they feel that as well. We have a really great school culture, and it's been cultivating for quite some time now. And in my 6 years of leadership, I can look back and think about, the challenges and obstacles like every other school has had to overcome. But I genuinely smile when I think of how far we have made it, and knowing that this school truly is remarkable in its own right. 3 years ago, we celebrated our 50th reopening anniversary. And so the history of the school, that alone is enough to kind of let people know how resilient this school community is. It closed at one point, and a group of parents in the 70s came back together and reopened it. And those parents that reopened it are now grandparents at our school. And so I think when I counted last, we have third generation Sacred Heart Spartans, which, being from the East Bay and growing up in really big school populations, seeing something like that is just heartwarming and sweet. And it reminds me that our school is here and we are still doing the work all those years later.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a testament to the community that we felt that right away when we came to visit, for sure. But also the fact that you were brought into the community or found yourself there, and fell in love so much so that snowballed into your role to the
Mhm.
point of being able to take over. Stuck around during the hardest possible time, at least in the last 10, 15 years, and it's thriving. I think there's definitely something special going on here. And Patterson, California is not exactly a big town. How many folks are there?
That is such a great question. I think we're at like 26,000.
All right, 26,000, and the parents came back, rebuilt the school, and it's thriving all these years later. There's a lot of
Yes.
schools, even in our San Francisco Archdiocese, who would be jealous of the progress that you've had. Part of that being the town and your ability to be the one school potentially for them to choose from in terms of the elementary Catholic schools. But there's obviously something else going on there if all of that success is just compounding. So it's really remarkable, and that's why I really wanted to bring you on to talk about it, because it definitely felt like there was something different. And you talked about a little bit about the legacy and a little bit about that family aspect. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more, because I remember seeing one of the coolest things that I don't know that I've seen it. I grew up in a school that's over 100 years old, and they've never put together that legacy kind
Mm,
of connection. They talk about
mhm,
it, but there's not a
mhm,
visual thing. I remember seeing families with their pictures where here are our third generations, all three generations of that family. Tell us a little bit more
mhm.
about that legacy.
Yeah, so again, I think, that was never lost on me. I think that for me, that's one of the things that really does bring me joy about this school is hearing and having that opportunity to listen to these first generation Sacred Heart Spartans that are able to talk to me and share stories about what it felt like to be a student here or a part of that reopening process, because I walked into a school that was already built and was sustainable and was ready to go. And so there's that aspect of it, but then I also never lose sight of the support they continue to give the school and me, right? Like they known me for just a number of years. I didn't grow up in this town. And so just welcoming me and allowing me to make these innovative changes for the school and continue the vision and continue that mission of the school that they put in place all of those years ago, right? And so that part of the legacy, I really truly appreciate. The school looks drastically different than it did 7 years ago. The changes that have been implemented structurally since I stepped into this role are vast. And so again, always right there with me, cheering me on. But this idea of getting these families together to take these legacy photos really was because I think that this school has something unique to it. And you said it, right? Like we are a small town. There's not a lot of Catholic schools near and around us. I think the closest ones are probably about 15 miles or so out, if not further. And so, just knowing that these grandparents, these parents believe in the school this much, despite all of the changes that have taken place over the last 15 years, to still send their students here is beautiful. And so I wanted to really try to capture that aspect of it. And we did these legacy photos last school year, and there was a little bit of a running joke that it literally took 5 years to get these off the ground because I would talk about it and talk about it. And sometimes that manifestation just takes that long. And watching these photos take place last year in this line of families and grandparents with their children and their grandchildren all just captured in one beautiful image was exactly what I was hoping to share with our school community, that the school is here, we are thriving, and we're inviting your family to be a part of this.
Yeah, and I think they feel that. I mean, the schools, the competing schools, the public ones are just down the street. So it's not like it's, you know, out of sight, out of mind. They're choosing your school because they feel something, and you're honoring that legacy. So that, and the town recognizes that, right? And I mean, the enrollment has grown pretty significantly over the last several years, hasn't it? I don't remember the
Correct,
exact number.
yes. Yes, when I stepped into this role in 2020, we were at 164 students, and we were right down, we decreased even lower than that. And then we opened our doors this fall, just last week, a week and a half ago, and we welcomed 235 students.
Wow. That's
Yes,
like
yeah,
a, like a 50% increase almost, That's
it's
amazing.
beautiful. It
Uh,
is.
and I mean, that's what sticks out to me too is, a lot of folks will talk about why do you choose a Catholic school? And they'll say, oh, our school is a community, we're a family, we have these values. And a lot of people can say that. It doesn't feel, it's not that palpable, right? It just sounds good, but when you recognize a place that truly embraces that and shows it, I mean, who am I to come to your school and feel that immediately? I have no connection to your school, to your town, to anything, and it's like, in my face right away that this is a place that the kids are loved, the families are honored, the legacy is honored, and the community is honored. It seems like an intentional, there's definitely intentional steps taken in order to make sure that that is felt. So it's not just, oh, because we're a Catholic school, we like everybody and therefore it's family. There is definitely something more intentional going on. And I think that's really cool. If you've got more secrets to that, I would love to hear it. But I'm also curious about how you've respected this legacy, the families recognize it, and they are rewarding the school by sending their kids there, sending their grandchildren there, supporting the school in different ways. How have that innovation also come into play? Because you mentioned that you've made a lot of changes, with the community, not against the community, and that's resulted in 80 more students in just a handful of years, which any school would gladly take.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I do. I think it always comes back to that building relationships. And I do think that is another benefit and beauty of this position is that, when I was at the preschool, I was able to touch that small group of families. When I moved into the third grade classroom, I was able to touch and build relationships with those 27 families. And now that I'm at this level, I am super blessed with the opportunity to build relationships with so many more families, right? And so it is just talking to people that want to hear and listen to my vision for the school and what strategic plans we're working on, and everybody wants to be able to be a part of that in some way, shape, or form, even if it is just being a sounding board. And so the ideas are always welcomed. And if it's an idea that is a little bit far fetched, then, everyone's comfortable enough to be able to kind of push back or say, hey, you know what, we did try that X amount of years ago. It didn't shake out too well. You may want to reconsider that. Right. And so I think when I'm talking to people that have been at this school for X amount of years, it is that because I'm always learning the history of the school, what worked. One example is I thought that this was going to be super amazing and so on point with this generation. We just put in lockers for 7th through 8th grade. And I said, gosh, I can't believe like this school's never had lockers. Like, gosh, I'm such a genius. And then it took one of our teachers, actually, who was an alumni, was like, oh yeah, we used to have lockers when I was here. And I was like, oh, okay, great. So it's, things like that, that it's like, okay, changes, but not necessarily doing anything that is so out of context where we're going to lose sight of why we're here, right? But there's just things like any Catholic school where they've been in place for a really long time, and we had two portables that worked really well when they worked. And I remembered my first year going into one of them, and I thought, what in the world, like, what is this sound? This is really distracting. Do you hear this noise all the time, like when you're teaching? And the teacher said, yes, that's the wind. It's like, oh my gosh, that wind is really loud. Like, I know that this is the best learning environment. And so then that summer, we removed both of those portables, and now all of our students have actual real walled classrooms, right? So it was things like that that I saw, noticed, talked to people like, hey, what do you think you would change? Like, if you had this opportunity to make some changes here, you've been here longer than me. What would that look like? And then really just trying to do the work to make those moves, but not lose the history of the school. Like that's a very clear boundary for me.
That's that's great to hear that, you're reaching out. So it's not like, you know, you've been donned with these wonderful ideas and you're, just making stuff happen, but you're, involving the staff, especially the ones who've been around for a while and kind of figuring things out. I think a lot of folks will get into the habit, especially they've been there for a long time of, oh, we've tried that before. Well, we might have tried that in like 1985. Maybe there's a new version of what that looks like,
Right.
40 years later. So not forgetting that there's lots of opportunity even just within your own staff to talk about things and give people the voice to share that, and obviously
Mhm.
to discuss what's possible. I mean, sometimes folks can come up with crazy things like, we should have the, masseuse in the faculty lounge at all times, and
Yes.
that
A,
would be
a
nice.
wonderful idea, by the way. Yes.
But maybe not the best use, and that looks a little bit suspicious on the budget. But you know, there's lots of great ideas that can be pulled from there and pulled from the community, and I think that's another one of those things that stood out to me in visiting the school is that you really do involve everybody in the community, whether they be generally attached or reaching out beyond that to get those ideas. Can we turn towards some of that community stuff? You mentioned that you have a handful of events that, most places you have fundraising events or you have community events, and you have like a career day or something like that, and you get parents to come and talk. But even within simple things like that, you seem to find some innovation. You mentioned that you have a learning by doing day, which allows for parents to come and not only talk about what they do, but get the kids involved. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. So again, one of those ideas that have just been on the vision board for a number of years. We have some partner schools in our diocese that do project-based learning days. And so kind of just couldn't wrap my brain around how to bring it on campus. And one of my new teachers, brand new, had approached me and said, hey, I have this idea. And it was along those same lines. And so I said, okay, why don't we call this a learn by doing day? And so we had our first one in May, and it was about 2 hour time block. And we kept our students in grade band, so K through 2, 3 through 5, 6 through 8. And then we just intermingled them. And she reached out to a lot of people in the community and parents, adults here that we knew had an expertise or specialty or genuine craft or hobby that they could share out with our students. And it was a day of joy. Absolute joy. So we have a MMA place here in town, and actually they have a student here as well. So that's wonderful. And a lot of our students go to them. And so they came out and showed students all these self-defense moves and tactics and all of those wonderful things. We have a new community partner that has a flower farm. So they came out and showed the students how to build up bouquets. We have a teacher that does gymnastics, and so they brought out the beam, and we partnered with our high school, which is a really big, really important to me because we are that small Catholic school in town. And so we're really working hard to build those relationships with our public school partners. And so she runs the cosmetology department. So she came out, and our students ended the day with hair braided and curled and updos and this and that. And we had, just something for everyone. And by the end of the day, we had 9 different stations. We had the local sheriff's department come out. So every student left learning something new. And so we're really excited for that to continue this year. We're going to kick it off in September with a college game day. And so every classroom will have a college, and then we'll have a big tailgate out in the parking lot, and they'll rotate through all of those stations. And then we'll bring back those people that were with us in May so that then the students can rotate again. And then ideally by the end of the year, they'll have made it through all of those little learning centers that we have for them. But it was just, not necessarily anything new to the world, but something new for us. And again, just another opportunity for us to build those relationships with our partners in the community.
Yeah, it sounds like a great event, and not a huge expense coming out of the school in order to make it happen,
Right. Right.
which is so big. But you're also, I think that there's a underlying piece. A lot of these things, especially with a fundraiser type situation, although this isn't that, but a lot of times we reach out to the community, and you've got asking parents like, who do you know, right? And or who do
Mhm.
you work for, and can you donate? And oftentimes it's we never get to that like second or third layer. By bringing all of these other people into the school to be able to interact with the students, in especially in a way that's going to be memorable, like you're expanding that family even more, right? And you
Mhm.
have people are now invested in your community, which I think, that makes for a great event. It makes for an affordable event, but it also makes for these stronger relationships that do maybe come back bigger when you do a fundraising,
Mhm.
or whatever else you might need. You're much more likely to be able to pick up the phone and you'll make that call and get something done. I think that's a wonderful way to look at it, and it's a lot more fun than just having people talk at the kids. Like the kids are involved in the activity. Love to see that more. The idea that we can be more than consumers. We can be creative in that process of learning too, and not just like that's a feel good thing for the few parents who show up to share what they do for work, right? So
Right.
what
Mhm.
another great example. How does that community then extend? Because I know you talked about like you have like all Catholic schools, you have to have your few fundraisers, but it seems like you might have a bigger fundraiser that you do get these folks who are not necessarily directly connected, but in the community participating either as sponsors or with prizes, etc. How have you been able to make those relationships happen?
That's a great question. So we do have a parent association board. We actually are just going through a transition right now. Our previous board has relinquished their seats, and we have welcomed a new board, all wonderful and exciting. The previous board and I had worked together for my first 5 years here. So it really was just very natural, I think. A lot of the members on that previous board were born and raised here in Patterson, went to school here at Sacred Heart.
Oh,
And so kind of getting, gathering auction items and things like that, I didn't have to play a huge role in. I think that my part becomes more so at the event, right? Like when we invite these donors to come in and join us for our Our biggest fundraiser is called Bash. And so when we invite them, to have a table or because they made this donation, they have tickets. I think that's when I get to do the heavy lifting and the legwork, right? Introducing myself and starting to build those relationships right there on the spot. And I get on the microphone and I'll, thank everybody and just talk about what our mission is and just really trying to make that time to tap everybody on the shoulder to say hi and put a face with a name and the school. I think that's what's really helpful. And then following up, when I see them in town, it makes it a little bit simpler for me. But I would say that that parent association does the heavy lifting at the beginning, and then I just kind of get to come in the last round there. So I would say that I'm very fortunate in that regard. But I also think that just, we're over the last 5 years, we've had a stronger presence on social media. And so I think that that helps tremendously. And it is still a small enough town where people are talking the good, the bad, the ugly. But regardless, our name is getting out there. And so with that, I think that helps to generate relationships with potential donors. And, sometimes it is something as simple as a raffle basket, right? But just that following up to let them know that we appreciate their support, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, and I think the following up, I think that's a huge piece, especially if they've done something for you in the past. Maybe the next time you need to purchase, food for something, you're going to go and, purchase that for, have them cater the event. So it goes both ways. You're part of their world as much as they're part of your world. And if you have
Right.
that reciprocation, I think it's amazing. One of the projects I often pitch to folks is, if you look at your zip code and you took all those businesses in your zip code and you looked at them and you asked you if you went in there and you asked them, what do you know about the school? Would they have a positive reaction, a bad reaction, or no reaction? And depending on which one of those they gave you, how could you get to that positive reaction? How can you have that relationship? Because if you have the relationship with those folks in the town, that means it's also the buzz, right? If the
Mhm.
businesses know your school is doing good things, the families are going to know, right? And they're going to see you, and
Right.
they're going to see your, oftentimes in an ice cream shop, you'll see like, thank you for providing the ice cream for our school. This is the best ice cream in the world, and you have the cute little picture made by a kindergartner or whatever it is. That
Mhm.
that's a nice reciprocation, and that costs next to nothing. Um,
Right.
and for them to donate ice cream, costs next to nothing too. So it's beautiful when you can build those relationships and you can foster that going forward, and not necessarily directly always with an ask at the end of it, right? I think
Right. Yes.
that's
You're
huge.
absolutely right. And also just recognizing that every donation is going to look a little bit different, right? And I think incorporating this learn by doing, we saw that, okay, so you're donating your time. And that's really important for us. And we really value that.
Yeah. So many good things. I feel like I have this list of notes from my visit that we could probably go into, but I think I have a couple more questions that'll help us kind of round off our conversation here.
Okay.
Where do you see things going forward? Like where do you plan to continue this growth? Do you see whether that be, for the school, or do you see the community and the family efforts, going in another direction or further direction? What's kind of next for Cigar Heart here?
That's a great question. So our community as a whole is growing rapidly. And so trying to really figure out what what growth are we looking for, right? Like I think our enrollment numbers are strong. Our team is phenomenal. So I feel like check. We have those things in line. What I would love to really see is us being able to more reach more families. And so really in line with our mission, growing our scholarship fund. We have a Spartan scholarship fund that I implemented in 2023. We are a Vincentian school, and so we follow the footsteps of St. Vincent de Paul. So we do serve the marginalized, we serve those in need. And so we created this Spartan scholarship fund. So I'd like to see that continuing to grow so that we can continue to really offer scholarships to our families in line with our mission. I think another piece that I would really like to start working towards is we have a preschool. They go from 2 years old to 5 years old, and then ideally they would mainstream right into our kindergarten. That turnover rate has been extremely high, which is exciting for us as a school. But I would really like to implement and put in a TK program. So, again, just really being able to support these students from when they're 2 years old all the way through eighth grade without them having to leave, take this break, and then return to us. I'm not caught up on how it is in the Bay Area, but out here, TKs are now in every elementary school, whereas before they were just in one. And so we are starting to notice that some students are headed in that direction and then they make their way back, right? But my goal really is that these students don't have to leave just to come back. Like, let's stay this entire time. So what are you looking for, right? Like, is it's not that break in the 1 year of tuition. It's not that. You're looking for more structure, academics. Okay, so something that's really truly labeled transitional kindergarten. And so starting to do that legwork to see what it would look like to have a TK classroom on this side of the fence. And with that would come the beauty of being able to have an isolated STEAM room. Right now, our STEAM room is back to back with our kindergarten classroom, and it's beautiful. But being able to have that on its own, I think we would be able to serve more students in that classroom. So I would say that structurally, those are that's probably my biggest part of my vision board right now. And I do think that it really is just ensuring the financial stability of the school because, like I said, I've been here for this is my 14th year. So I've seen a lot that's gone on here at the school, just like a lot of other Catholic schools, right? You have those highs, you have those lows, but really just making sure that it is set up for success whenever my beautiful time here comes to a close and I get to retire and move to Turks and Caicos.
That sounds pretty amazing.
Great
I think
vision, right?
it's great to hear that, they could step in at 2 and leave at 14. Like, that's really a commitment to a family and the family to the school, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna be with you through all of it, and then we're gonna make
Yes.
sure that you're prepared for the next round. I think that's beautiful. And based on what I've seen so far, I think you're gonna be able to pull that off with the help of your wonderful staff and all of the community that's behind you.
Thank you.
So, my final question, let's just say a principal is listening to this right now and they're at that spot 5 years ago, or maybe a teacher who's a little bit further, behind in time, and they want to get to the place where it sounds like you're at. What would be like the first thing that you would say, hey, here's some low hanging fruit. Here's my challenge to you. Do this and you'll start down this path. What would you recommend people start with in their baby steps?
Oh gosh, that is such a great question. Let's see. I think one of the things that I have written on my chalkboard here was a very profound reminder when I was in the Remick Leadership Program. This idea of patient urgency and one pebble at a time. And so I think it's coming in with a vision, but also taking that balcony view to really try to determine what are the low hanging fruit, right? Because we may come into a situation and think, like, okay, this is easy peasy. I changed our faith families that first year, and oh, good Lord, like I had no idea that was not a low hanging fruit. That was huge, a huge tumultuous shift in the culture of the school. And I still apologize 6 years later for that. So really just kind of that balcony view to determine what the low hanging fruit are, keeping that vision in front of you, but really anchoring yourself in the mission. And I think that the rest of it just starts to come into play. I lean on other school leaders. I have a beautiful cohort that is uplifting in the most amazing way from that program that I graduated from. And it really is just, surrounding yourself sometimes with leaders that can affirm and support you. And I think, as far as anybody that's in education, it's really just reminding yourself that you are making a difference. Because some days can be really heavy, right? But at the end of it, just knowing, even if you don't necessarily feel it, but just knowing that you made an impact today, and in a beautiful way, in a really beautiful way, in that these students are really looking to us as their adults away from home. And what a beautiful privilege and honor that is.
That's so great. I'm so inspired by what your school's doing. I think you're a great leader, and I'm hoping that everybody who's listening to this can learn from it. And if they want to find out more about your school, shcspatterson.org. Maybe Theresa wouldn't mind you bugging you bugging
Yeah.
her. Go out for a visit and feel the difference. I think it's pretty remarkable. There's so many things. We might have to have Theresa back just to talk about some of the other things that she's got going on at the school. But it's such a great lesson that, one, let's see what's going on here. Let's embrace that community and let's involve all those folks and let's build something beautiful because the kids deserve it.
They
The
do.
community deserves it. The town deserves it. And it's the best job we can do. At the end of every newsletter is we've got the best job in the world. The greatest responsibility, the greatest joy is the ability to affect these kids. And so I think you're doing a great job of that. And I want to commend you for that. I'm so glad we had our chance to talk today. And I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to more time in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for considering us and visiting our school. And I'm just humbled that you felt that right when you walked through the gates. That's very affirming. So thank you.
Yeah, you're doing the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on In Search of Catholic School Excellence. We hope you heard something inspiring or something you'd like to try at your own school. Please share this episode and leave a review to help others find us. To see how we can support your journey toward excellence, visit ilovemytechteam.com. Until next time, celebrate what's working and keep reaching for what's possible.